Welcome to the Sportswire Spotlight podcast. I'm Will Kaderli. Joining me, as always, co-host Dylan Garner. Dylan, since last time we've talked, we've had a lot going on.
Yes, today we're at Highland Springs High School, but we wanted to chat a little bit about all the action kind of going around in Henrico County sports recently. Obviously, a lot going on. It's kind of the meat of September, It's like everything's kind of going full force now. Right. We're out of the early season, kind of slow period. So you've obviously been at a lot of these places over the last couple of weeks. Do you want to share a couple highlights with us?
Yeah, I mean, we've got, football. You think of football first and foremost, but let's talk about some other sports. One would be field hockey. Glen Allen taking on Godwin on the road. Great matchup. Godwin hadn't lost since first game of the year against Atlee, and they hold serve at home. Glen Allen gives them a tough fight, though. They score the opening goal on a penalty. Godwin, though, in field hockey, the more opportunities you generate on the attacking end, the more corners you get, the more goals you score. It's going to happen. And the goalie for Glen Allen, like I said, was tremendous. But Godwin came back, tied that one up, took a 2-1 win. Another big one, guys volleyball. And again, this involves Glen Allen. They're defending state champions.
They're serious. I saw them win their first state championship a couple years ago. That is an impressive team.
That is a really good team. They're a little bit younger this year. They've had a really great rivalry with Deep Run over the years. Lately, it's been Glen Allen dominating that. And before, it was, how do we beat Kevin Pond's squad?
Yeah.
All of a sudden now, the tables are kind of evening out a little bit, turning a little bit. It's getting a little level. Deep Run won a huge 5-set match, and they did it at Glen Allen. They were down 2-1. That's in the latest Sportswire that just came out. And they won the last 2 sets to win 3-2. And then there's a ton of stories, a ton of games that, we haven't been at yet. And we love to cover regional golf, right? It's tough, though, because if you're a golf fan, you watch the Masters or any big tournament, you got blimp cam, you've got cameras at every hole almost. You got
the graphics showing where the ball's traveling.
Right, you don't get that
luxury.
No, it's just me with a camera on my shoulder. Sometimes they're nice enough to give me a cart, right? And then you can kind of travel and get ahead of a par 5 and get some of the better golfers hitting the ball towards you. You might get a couple of good putts. But under the radar, Freeman is dominating. Charlie White and company, they're not just winning, and it's not just one guy always being the top medalist being the best golfer, getting the lowest round. Yeah. They've got a full squad of guys. And again, back to Deep Run, they used to rule the roost when it comes to golf, even at the state level. This year, you see it on Twitter. I keep liking it and retweeting it. I will get to you, Freeman, golf. But
we see you.
We see you. I keep liking it and retweeting it, but they just keep winning. And it's like, are they going to lose? They're a deep, solid team. We got a lot of really good golf teams, and they're not the only ones, Dylan, because we were talking before. Varina, yeah. Varina gets a huge win. I don't think they've ever beaten Mechanicsville. And they get a big win on the golf course. When you think of Varina, you think of Varina golf first and foremost, right? No, you think of football.
Exactly.
You think of Varina football. Speaking of football, that's been a really fun week for a couple of programs. I think the Sportswire Spotlight podcast is partly responsible for what Joe Mullenix did at Deep Run.
Turn the tables.
That's right. They get their first win of the season, and they do it on the road 7-6 against Meadowbrook. They actually gave up a touchdown on the very, very first play of the game, and they come back and they win. They get the game-winning touchdown with 48 seconds left, something like that. Difference is they make their extra point. It's a first win for the varsity program in 3 years. Meanwhile, down the road, Godwin, down 21-0. They come back. They beat Hanover. And they're 4-0 for the first time in 23 years. They got a big game coming up, homecoming at Hermitage.
That's going to be huge.
So that's a huge game. But speaking of huge, when it comes to football, nobody rules a roost in the 804 like Highland Springs.
No kidding.
and then that's where we are today. two great guests talking Springer football. And I think most people at home will understand who the guests are going to be.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you think about, I mean, Loren Johnson, coach here at Highland Springs, has just kind of created this, culture of excellence that we've seen for 15 years now.
Yeah.
I remember I worked at the Times-Dispatch for a long time, and I remember being there for their, I think, 2015 title game. Mekhi Becton, 6'7" there, Greg Dortch, the ultimate kick returner, scat back, cornerback, but it's just been a snowball ever since. And then we have our other guys, Khristian Martin, who is kind of the current version of, he's the face of, the players on the field right now. And, this is one of the elite programs, not only in the state, but the country, and they play like it, and they travel and do all these crazy things. And it's just really interesting to pick their brain on, hey, this is football, right? But this is bigger than the average football.
Yeah, it's a story about an interview about football, but it's also about life and what Loren's been able to do and what Khristian is currently doing. Just committed to the University of Maryland, so he's got a really bright future. But and we even get we're going to get into the fact that they've even had NFL success. And you watch on Sundays, Mondays, Thursday night football too. Several Springers have made it to the elite level. So really excited for this week. Loren Johnson and Khristian Martin in the Sportswire Spotlight. So here we are at Highland Springs High School. One man who needs no introduction, head coach of the Highland Springs varsity football team, Loren Johnson, a head coach since 2008, over 110 wins, well now 115, and only 11 losses on the year. 5 state titles in the last 9 years, 4 in a row at one point. Head coach of the year in the state of Virginia, and starting quarterback senior Khristian Martin threw for over 3,000 passing yards last year, including 43 total touchdowns in 2022, and he's back at the saddle again. Recent commit to the University of Maryland. I'm Will Kaderli, obviously. Dylan Garner joining us. Guys, let's get right to it. Highland Springs, first let's focus on the here and now. You had your first loss against Maury. Khristian, you've never experienced a loss before. You come back. You didn't have to do a lot of work. Handing the football off to this young sophomore running back, 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards, Eric Bird. How did you deal with the first loss that you've really experienced at the helm at starting quarterback?
Well, it's not my first loss. My sophomore year, we lost 4 games.
Oh, I forgot that.
So,
that's right.
Wasn't my first one. Definitely tough not losing a game for a season.
A while, yeah.
So coming back and losing to a 7-5-7 team, and especially down there when we know we could have played a lot better, a lot cleaner, and at the end of the day we beat ourselves. That was really disappointing. So just coming back and cleaning up those things and just getting better.
And Coach, for you, you built up this program. He listed off the long list of accolades and how long you've been doing this and how much success you've had. But, in those 11 losses, what's the mindset for you on, okay, this isn't something we deal with a lot, but we have to deal with it and deal with it well by the time the next game rolls on?
First of all, they're human beings, right? And no human being is perfect. But I think the one thing that I've learned throughout all of my years and all of my losses is that you got to just come back, and it's never as bad as it looks, and it's never as good as it looks.
Right.
So just take a deep breath, give them an opportunity to see themselves making the mistakes or going through the process, and then give them the vision of what they can look like if they do it the correct way. So it's a process. A lot of what we do is a process, and sometimes the process takes a little bit longer for people to adhere to or to agree with. But the faster they understand what we're trying to do and what we're trying to get accomplished, the faster we rebound and we can kind of move throughout the season. Never does a loss dictate or determine the outcome of the year.
Exactly.
So even though it's tough and these kids haven't done it a lot, the wins don't always determine the outcome of the year either. So we got to really be flatline. I've learned that, years and years ago during my playing time. Can't be too high, can't be too low. This is the one time that having a flat line is really, really important to, the organization and what we're trying to get accomplished. So, in the hospital, Flatline is not good, but at Highland Springs High School, Flatline is really good.
Even keel.
Even keel.
Cold-blooded.
Yes, sir.
It's funny you mentioned that, though, because your highs are normally really high at Highland Springs.
Yeah.
Your lows are, everybody wished they had your lows, right? And so bringing that up, Khristian, since you rarely lose, I know you talk about the 4 losses, but that's JV time. But I've seen you talk to Coach Johnson. There are times where, how do you guys handle adversity when, it's not like things are always nice. I've seen heated debates between the two of you guys, but you handle it well, and you end up making the play. You play the play. How do you guys handle it when you're talking to each other?
I'll go first. So I spent a lot of time with Coach John. Spent a lot of time with us, and he's very. He used the word a couple weeks ago. He's not transactional. What's the word you use, Coach John?
Transformational.
Yeah, transformational. So I know when he's coming to me like that, he has a high expectation of me, and for him to come to me that way, I'm wrong. I'm doing something wrong, and he has a high expectation. So there's something I'm doing wrong, and he's expecting me to change that. So I know it's coming from a place of love. It's never like personal, like he says. It's never personal. It's always from a place of love and trying to get the best out of me. So I understand that. So there's no need for me to be defensive about it or anything like that, because we spent the time together. 9 times out of 10, we've already talked about it. So it's no reason that I shouldn't be doing what he asked me to do. So when he comes to me that way, it's just a challenge, just challenging me.
That's a pretty good answer, to be honest with you. Khristian's right, but in a sense, he probably said one thing that's wrong. There are times where I'm not correct, right? Let's
we're all
be honest.
human.
Yeah, we are human, but he receives it in a way. I think when we go over things at the rate that we go over them, and at the level that we go over them, and then the time that's spent and the time that's invested, it's any parent that's with their child. You know what I mean? You make a decision, you make a statement, you make a comment, right? If the actions are contrary to what we've already talked about, then there's a little bit of disappointment. And I think he's never truly disappointed me as a player or a person. I think the one thing that I do is I want him to play so well. I want him to play so much better than I played. I want him to play so much better than Juwan Carter played. I want him to play so much better than Devontae Waller. All the names that you've called Will in the past, I want him to play better than those guys, because he's doing something that we haven't had done here at Highland Springs in a really, really long time, and that's have a quarterback play major Power 5 football. Yeah. So we talk a lot about next year, even this year. So he's prepared for 3 years from now.
Well,
that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You're prepared for travel.
That's correct.
That's for sure. I mean, this program's gotten to the point now where you're playing teams from, it's one thing to go out of state, play West Virginia, play a team out of Maryland. You go down to Miramar,
Miami Beach,
and I didn't realize this at the time. That's your alma mater. It sounds like an old school Disney movie. I mean, you're going back to face your old school. Did you ever picture that? And when you were actually on the field, what was it like? Like, oh my God, I'm back in my old school again.
So no, I never pictured it, never even thought of it. But sometimes, the good Lord above, he does more than you can even imagine sometimes. So for me, it was one of those deals where we just have an opportunity to play a game in South Florida. And really where it really started was last year, that same time. So August, we're watching the games on TV. I'm talking to Harry Lee. I said, man, we got to get a game, in South Florida. So we have this opportunity to go talk.
Hold on, we got to get a game in South Florida. This is a high school coach talk. We got to get a game in South Florida.
A public high school. I mean, for us, we want to give our kids the opportunity again. We want to be transformational. We want to give them an opportunity to see something that they may have never seen before, right? So, we'll talk about that here in a second, but getting the game started and getting into that, conversation with the people in South Florida was a little bit of a task. That's above my pay grade. So my AD handles that. And then they said, hey, the game that we would love for you to play, because we want to get this team involved, is Miramar High School. So Harry Lee, our AD gets into the conversation with them, and they have candid conversation. Right. The individual that runs the organization, his name is Sean. Sean is kind of our Rick Lilly in our county. Got it. Okay, so Sean Mara was a teacher in the high school when I went to school. There was a first-year teacher. Wow. I did not know who he was. But you follow the people that went to your school. So that's the kind of the school spirit. The same way it is at Highland Springs, it is at Miramar High School. And then with that situation, Sean is able to connect some dots. And then we got a gentleman Mr. Perry or Dr. Perry, who lived in Virginia Beach, who now lives in South Florida. He's the AD at Hollywood Hills. He knew about Coach Johnson from when he played. So there's so many connections that kind of get us to where we were in that game against the team. Now, being on the field was very nostalgic to start. But once the whistle blew to start the game, it was football. It
Back
was
to business.
Yeah, it was nothing nostalgic about that. I told the kids numerous times that, hey, this is the field that I trained on. From that field, you can actually see Hard Rock Stadium.
Wow.
The stadium that I played in as a college athlete. Wow. So that's kind of was my goal, to play in that as a professional athlete. Never, manifested, but it was one of those deals that you can see. So they had an idea of what it looked like. There were times where I went home to visit. I took pictures of the field, showed them the field, showed them the entrance.
Right.
So we just kind of prepared them and ready to go. So we got all that out of the way.
So, Khristian, how was the trip? I mean, you guys did you bust down?
Oh, no, we flew.
Okay, okay.
That is too long of a bus ride.
Hey,
Will, come on now.
Preseason, I heard you were leaving on Wednesday, so
He doesn't
I don't
have
know.
that much school to get.
That's true.
I think, Will, in that situation, man.
I've taken a bus from like Albany, New York to Kansas City. It's no fun.
Don't do it.
That's not fun at all.
Not again.
That's not fun at all.
All right, nice. Flying into Miami. Khristian, though, I do want to bring this up and bring it back to you a little bit, because Coach just talked about some great quarterbacks, some great Springer legends. You recently committed to the University of Maryland. Now, for guys like Dylan and I, we see it from the outside, right? We see the post that player X, Y, or Z is down to 5 schools, right? Some of them are Power 5, some are in-state. And then and they're great graphics. We've gotten to the point now where it's like a business. Graphics are made.
Right.
Somebody puts together a video for you, and then you have the final reveal. That's what we see. What is it really like from an athlete's perspective, the recruiting perspective? What's the daily routine like? Are you bombarded suddenly? Is there a lull? How does that work for you?
So I can say from my experience, kind of just started off slow, like from my sophomore year. And then I say probably like my junior year hit, I think it's September 1st. That's kind of when you really get bombarded. You kind of got to really sit back and think like, how am I going to time manage this mentally? Because it can take a toll on you mentally. So especially as a quarterback. So you have to figure out how you're going to manage that time and different things. And then kind of as you get through the process, schools start to weave their own selves out. Maybe they just took a quarterback commit already, or just not the best fit for you. You haven't been talking to the coach. So I know for me, like, come down to decision-maker time, usually only down to maybe like 2 or 3 schools. At least that's what was my experience. And then kind of take your official visits. And I kind of knew like a month before I announced it. It was long before I announced that I had already committed.
And, was there a moment during that process? I know the process takes a long time for people, and like I said, it can be stress. It's a combination of like, fun and stress, I'm sure, because of all the attention you're getting and all this stuff and the distractions. But was there a moment during that process, either talking to Maryland or talking to anyone else, that was like, wow, this is real. Like, this is huge and this is real, and I'm in this kind of wild recruiting space, for huge programs?
I can say the first time I probably felt that is just visiting ODU, even though that's an in-state school. As a sophomore, 10th grader, going into my sophomore year, still 9th grade. Yeah, you kind of just you just dream of that moment, getting that first offer. So just being able to go down there and be with Coach Ronnie, who was the head coach there, and knowing his resume at Penn State, that was surreal. And then I'll say another time was when I visited Texas A&M, just seeing that was on a different level.
Yeah,
as far as the facilities.
Yeah. College Station is a crazy place. They love their football down there.
And then the building of the new facilities. I mean, I get down there, I think their facility was 3 years old. They were already building a new one. So just seeing that, and that was on a different level. Yeah. And then just seeing some of the guys that you watched in high school on TV, and now like those guys right there, and it's kind of a little different. Yeah. You're like, oh, these are guys I'll be playing in the next 1 or 2 years.
Well, Loren, I want to bring this back to you, Coach, because one of your sayings, it's not transactional, transformational.
Right.
So recruiting here at Highland Springs, everybody's like, oh, yeah, this player gets to go play. This is transformational.
Right.
What's happened at this program is literally transformational, and in a way kind of transactional for each individual player. But before the whole NIL, before the whole money deal going on here with college, the number of high school players who you've transformationally changed their lives, free education, we're talking multi-millions of dollars.
Yes.
That's even before you get to the guys that are in the NFL.
We're not talking about Mekhi Becton and Greg Dortch here. We're just talking about
Or
guys
Kayvon Wallace,
or Kayvon
Isaiah
Wallace.
Winstead, or Mike Green.
Exactly.
I mean,
Those are the 5 that are in the NFL right now.
Yeah, fun fact for the NFL, and I'm a Giants fan. Okay?
Yes.
The New York Jets have 2 Henrico County tackles, bookend tackles: Dwayne Brown, Hermitage,
Yes.
Mekhi Becton,
Yes.
Highland Springs.
That is a wild thing.
But when you look at what you've done at Highland Springs, and when you look at each player, and honestly, signing day is a community thing. You
Yes.
see, this is the whole community of Highland Springs comes together. What are you thinking? Because I know as a coach you're thinking in the here and now, but when you take a step back and you see how many players' lives you touched, how many families you've touched, and how you've built this community through football, through family, what goes through your head on that?
So the day of, I just want to get through it. To be absolutely honest with you, I've not taken I'm learning how to do this. I'm not taking a full step back. I've taken a half a step back and kind of thought about it a little bit, Will. Traditionally, what I do, when we get to signing day, I'm moving to the next class. Mm-hmm. If we win a state championship, I'm moving to the next year.
Right.
I haven't been really, really good at taking a step back and kind of enjoying it a lot. Me and Scott Burton, the former coach, talked here 2 days ago. He sent me a text because the Wall of Fame banquet is coming up tonight. And you know, Friday is the Wall of Fame game. So he was congratulating me. And then I just told him, he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm glad you texted me because probably tonight after the banquet, I'll be trying to sneak out and trying to just find a way to go watch film or the football game that's on TV." Right. So I really don't kind of dwell in that. But I think the number one thing for me and for the guys is that, you know, we have a plan and we execute the plan the best we possibly can. Number one thing was in 2017, this was a little bit after I'd been here for a while, maybe even 2016, the New York Times came out with an article, and the article said that Highland Springs had the third highest missing male rate, black male rate in the United States. Third. It was behind Manhattan, New York, if I'm not mistaken, and Ferguson, Missouri. That was in 2017, yes. So that's missing. And you got to go back to the article and kind of look at detail, but it was just talking about people not being present, right? So the number one thing for them is I need them to be present. Like, I need them to be great fathers, great husbands, great, community residents, right? And I need them to be productive in society. So that is the number one goal, regardless of what people think. The football is happenstance. Football is my vehicle to get them to be better in their community.
Cherry on top of the sun.
That is it. Them going to the NFL is icing on the cake. Them going to college and going to college for free is essential. That is imperative, because what it does is it gives them a leg up. Anybody that's watching this understands that if I go to school with no debt, I can be a little bit better coming out.
I think we understand.
Okay, all right. So everybody understands that, right? Man, so I had that opportunity. I had that opportunity to go to school with no debt, right? So even when you go to Randolph-Macon, if you can go to Randolph-Macon with little or no debt, like we are in front of the ball. We're in front of the 8 ball. Like we're ahead of the game. Like we're winning the race, or we're at least equivalent with others that are in the race. So none of my kids are coming to me with silver spoons in their mouths. They're not, there's some kids that are. Kudos to their families. Their families did a great job, but I need their children, which I would consider my grandkids, right, to have silver spoons in their mouths, right? So that is kind of the goal. That's the vision. That's where we want them to be. So anybody that's here, those are the lessons that they're going to get. It's going to be tough love. They know that.
But
right?
And the funny thing is, it's not just a Springer family, but your own personal family. And I do want to get to that, but I want to get back to you, Khristian, because, okay, you got Tua's brother at Maryland, right? Mm-hmm. Who do you model your game after, whether you're watching the NFL or college or other high school players?
It's a great question.
Where do you get your game from?
I wouldn't say any one guy, because I try to be my own person, but I do try and take a lot of things from a lot of different guys to hopefully be the best and reach my full potential. So I'd say like some of those guys, Patrick Mahomes, definitely like his improvising different things. Then I say recently Joe Milton. I mean, he has a rocket arm. Can throw the ball far. Tom Brady, just being able to read defenses. I feel like, me and Coach Johnson been talking about this, just getting the ball out your hands quickly and efficiently and just making up your mind. So being able to do that, so to feel like with Tom Brady, the time he spent in the film room, just knowing his defense, knowing his offense, that's just a big part. And if I want to play football for a long time, that's something I have to and essentially continue to get better at.
And Loren, I mean, I think Will was touching on it before, but you have your kids in this program, but you also have your own children coming through this program, right? You have your athletes who you all embrace, but also your actual kids here,
right?
And you mentioned all these things you have to balance, right? Recruiting, success, failure, community. How do those things manifest when you're also dealing with your kids at the dinner table, at night, and they're also part of this program that you're building, and they have to buy into the same things that Khristian and everyone else has to buy into as well?
So Braylon was the first to come through, and we never talked about football at home.
Yeah.
We just never did it. We never talked about it on the car ride to and from. We very rarely talked about it at the dinner table. Brennan is here, and that's a lot different because I'm usually fussing at Brennan in so many different ways.
It's always the youngest son.
Yeah. But Brennan just makes it interesting. He asks why a lot, so we have a lot of conversation. And I love him for that because he's growing. That's his method of growing. He was a Geisel student over at Wilder, so he's a gifted kid, and he thinks gifted, right? He also lives gifted. He's not very clean and very organized. Like, he's all over the place. But he knows, and he can function in his mess, right? Mm-hmm. So I love that about him. I can say this, and this probably puts it in perspective for a lot of people. If we didn't win a state championship before Braylon graduated, I would have been distraught as a dad. Yeah. I would have been hurt as a dad. I mean, that was very, very important. And we were so close, his junior year, we lost in the semifinals. We were close his sophomore year. We lost in the state championship. So to get to that game last year and not have all of the pieces of the puzzle fall into place would have took a toll on me tremendously, I think. There's no difference now with Brennan being here and Kendall, running track here. Yeah. If Kendall doesn't, the conversation was had with her the other day. Like, if you don't win a state championship in track and field, I don't know if we can call you a Johnson. You know what I mean? So we just jokingly said that. She's got a tough task, right? She's a 1,500 meter running, mile. She's everything 800 and above, 3,000, 800. 4x4, 4x8. She's got a lot. She's got a full plate. So that's going to be a tough deal for her. Mm-hmm. But we jokingly put those high expectations on her, and hopefully she bounces back. So being a dad in that situation, hopefully the example speaks volumes about how I feel about my kids being here. I would not have them go to any other school. We are Verona by zone. Yeah, right. We are Verona by zone, but both of my boys in the ACA, and then Kendall. She gets an opportunity to be here, with a parent variant. So it works out really well.
Khristian, what's it going? I mean, for Coach Johnson, he's won multiple state championships. Winning that one last year had to be really special for you. What's it going to take for you guys to win again this year, go back to back?
I say do everything that we did last year, but better. Obviously, teams are going to look at that film. They're going to watch our film from this year, and they're going to get better themselves. So we have to be better than we were last year. I would say discipline and focus. That's a big thing. And consistency. I can say up to this point so far this year, we haven't been consistent. And if we can stay consistent, like, we've had some really highs, like playing really well, but we've also played really bad at times. So if we can just stay consistent, playing at our high, not too high, but not too low, I feel like we could be a very dominant team, and that'll take what it would take for us to get back there.
Well, you were dominant in the trenches against Norcom. You didn't even have to really throw many passes. You didn't have to. I mean, offensive, defensive line. I do want to. We do have to wrap it up pretty quick. But Loren, I'm just thinking back about your AD, and I used to cover him when he was a wide receiver. He doesn't look like one anymore. But he would say something on Twitter all the time, like, "It's different at the Springs." Yep. That was his line.
Yep.
And it is different, but I thought it was a slogan. I thought it was a marketing term.
Right.
And then, like, a few years ago, you're beating the heck out of Henrico on the road, and I hear it's almost fourth down. You actually have to punt. Oh my gosh! Game breakers, get ready. Right. Game breakers, get ready. I'm like, who are the game breakers? It's a punt team. Yeah. No, you go to other games, they say punt team, get ready. Right. And then I realize he's not wrong. It really is different at the Springs.
Yeah.
How did you guys make it different at the Springs?
Well, let's give credit to, I said his name earlier, Scott Burton and his staff. Previous to me getting here, there were some things put in place that we just kind of maintained. You know, and then the culture is a little bit different. You go back to Coach Ward, you go all the way back to Coach, you know, Al Rinaldi, you know, Coach Bratton, Scott Burton, Coach Stokes. Like, I know them all. It's not a lot of coaches that have been here. There's a history and tradition that's been here for a really, really long time, and I'm just trying to maintain it and take it to another level. So those guys have done a tremendous job of getting it where it was, and then I guess the next job, or even for the coach after me, is to take it to another level. And that, you know, I'm going to make it as hard as I possibly can for the individual coming in behind me. But I think that's what you got to do. We want to cater to being transformational, not being transactional. We do want to focus on that. We want to make sure we give them an opportunity to be successful later on in life. You know, only 7% of high school athletes become professional athletes, but all 100% of them become adults.
Well said. Well said.
So we got to get them prepared, right? So that's what we want to do, and that's how we get them where we need them to be. So with that being said, we just got to make sure that the tradition is maintained and it's withstands anything that comes this way, whether it's a new building after 100 years or, you know, not playing on your home field for, you know, 2 seasons, whatever the situation is, we got to make sure it withstands it, because we want it to continue to be different here, and we want everybody to have an opportunity to be their best that they can be once they leave here. And football is the vehicle that gets us there, right? So it's not a Volkswagen Bug. It's not that small. It's not a limousine. It's not that big. It's kind of a cruise liner. We want everybody on board, no matter what sport they play, no matter what they do in the building. There's 2,000 students in this building. We want all 2,000 students to be life ready. That's our vision from our principal.
That's Henrico County's vision.
Yeah, we just wanted to be life ready, right? So with that being said, so now you just added another layer to it. If they're in this county at this school playing for Coach Johnson, we need them to be more than life ready. We need them to be prepared and ready to go so they can be successful at anything.
And that brings us to the future. And Khristian, let's talk about yours. What do you see in your future at the University of Maryland? How do you be the best man? I think you're more adult than I am, and you're in high school. But how do you be the best man you can be, but also the best football player? Being in the Big Ten Conference, I mean, at least you're going to be used to traveling. Mm-hmm. How do you be the best quarterback you can be at Maryland, best teammate?
I would say first starting with a self-accountability. I can't not hold myself accountable, but try and hold others accountable, especially coming into a new team. So with that being said, being a leader, coming in being a leader, and then just continue to work and do what I'm supposed to do in the classroom, in the community, in Maryland, and continue to be a good son. I think if I do those things, everything will fall in place, and whatever the Lord has in place for me, I will be able to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And Coach, you have kids.
Yeah.
They're almost graduated.
Yeah.
You've been doing this since 2008. I've been doing Sportswire since 2006.
Okay.
We've been at this a long time.
Long time.
Speaking of long-winded questions,
all right.
What's your future? Have you thought about retirement? Are you going to be doing this till you're getting as gray as me on the side of my head?
I don't know, Will. Let me be transparent and be open, very candid with you. I used to always say, hey, man, when Brennan was finished, I would be done, right? That would have been, I guess, I've been here 16, that would have been 18 years, right?
Right.
Then I said, okay, there have been opportunities, you know, even before Braylon got here, to leave and go to different schools in different states. There was opportunities to go to colleges and coach. There was a close call right before COVID to go to Virginia Tech and work as, you know, in player development, which is something I was really interested in. It just didn't work well for the family.
And your son ends up going.
Yeah, my son ended up going there. So,
you messed that up. My school.
So I've definitely thought about it. Right, it's in the back of my mind. You know, I've been in education now since 2000. Right, so that's 23 years. So you're getting close.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I've thought about working on my national board certification. I've done that. I've started that process. Need to get back to it. I've thought about being a principal. I've thought about being assistant principal. I've thought about a lot of different things. But there's a young lady that's here in the building, and she runs track.
Okay.
And I think I owe it to her to be here for at least another 3 years until she graduates. And then we'll make a move from there. However, if somebody presents something to me that's life altering, I make no excuse about it. I am gone.
There you go.
Right. And when I mean life altering, the adults that are watching the podcast know, like, there's certain amounts that are not life altering.
Right.
But if there is something that's life altering for our family, we're gonna consider it heavily.
Well, guys, we really appreciate you being part of the Sportswire Spotlight and
Absolutely.
being in the spotlight. Highland Springs is used to being in the spotlight.
Very much so.
Continued success. Wish you the best. Wish you the best, Maryland. You still got work to do here.
Yes.
Obviously, to win 2 straight state titles and make it 6 out of 10 years.
Yeah.
So, guys, really appreciate you being part of the podcast.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for having us.
So, Will, that was an excellent interview. I really enjoyed hearing from both of those guys and their perspectives on, this, like we mentioned, unprecedented kind of football culture, team, everything that they got going on here at Highland Springs.
I love the line that Loren, and it's not a line, he lives by it. It's not transactional, it's transformational. I think that's terrific what he's done for the community here at Highland Springs, and he talks about it. He's like, football's just a vehicle here. It's not the end game. Now, on Friday nights, it may not seem that way. He gets into it. He's a mastermind when it comes to detail. Khristian Martin, what a great kid. I think he's more mature than me, and he's only in high school. So
I can confirm that's true.
That's right. You can confirm it. So can the rest of the coworkers I have. And best of luck to them. They righted the ship after losing. They lost a game to Maury. Maury, by the way, they beat Dinwiddie the following week on the road at Dinwiddie. So that's a heck of a program there. But they righted the ship. Huge win over IC Norcom. Dominated the line of scrimmage. Up next, they have Riverbend. Another quality team. Springers don't hide from anybody. They just keep lining up a really, really heavy schedule.
No cupcakes.
But this Friday, Highland Springs will look to make it 2 straight. And again, only 1 loss in the season. Class 6 this year, not Class 5. So they're looking good. They're fine.
Yeah. That will be a really fascinating thing to see, though, through the end of the season, because this is their first time jumping up, right? I think Glen Allen's Class 6 and some others jumped up, in the state. So very interested to see how that kind of shifts it a little bit. Maybe it's just them going straight to the end like they normally have, but it's a much different road, even if it's kind of a traditional schedule. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And at the top, we mentioned, some of the other games coming up. You mentioned Godwin's got a big game with Hermitage coming up, I believe. And you have kind of an interesting tidbit of why that's such an interesting matchup on your eyes.
Yeah, so, you get, when you talk football, well, a lot of different sports, but since we're talking football, it's a close community. It's funny because we're just coming off this conversation, the podcast about the Highland Springs community. So Coach Earl Kinney is at Godwin, but he still teaches at Hermitage. Coach Timothy Jean-Pierre is the head coach at Hermitage. And, Coach Kinney actually coached Jean-Pierre when he was younger, as my phone is blowing up. When he was younger, he coached Jean-Pierre, actually drove him to Bowie State where he would end up playing. So it's a fun, friendly rivalry, and since they're both at the same school, and it's homecoming week at Hermitage, this Godwin Hermitage game is going to be really fun. And it's kind of a cool little story behind the scenes. Another big one is, Deep Run comes off their first win. Freeman's undefeated, and
it's my Mavericks.
Yeah, the Mavs, and you don't get it as much as you used to, but they got to win over Collegiate. You don't get those public-private school matchups.
I was going to say, I went to Freeman, it gets longer by the year at this point, but, I think that used to be, Collegiate is kind of a natural location rivalry for them, because it's so close, even though public-private. So it's cool seeing when they match up in sports like lacrosse, like football and stuff like that.
Right. Godwin used to play Collegiate all the time. Mm-hmm. Verina coming off a bye week. They got Henrico. Congratulations to head coach of Henrico, Deshaun Holmes, getting his first win, a dominating fashion against Tucker. Tucker has a chance for their first win. They play John Marshall. John Marshall's got some elite players, but Tucker's, rooting for Bryce Fritz and company to get their first win. They got a shot against John Marshall for sure.
Exactly. And I wanted to give a quick shout out real quick. We talked about some of the other sports going on. I wanted to give a shout out to my cross country people because I know I'm very close to them based on my old, job and stuff. So
you covered a lot of great runners at the Times Dispatch.
A lot of track, a lot of cross country. They just did the RVA relays, I believe, this past weekend. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to I think Kaderli and girls won that relay. It's a really fun event. That's kind of a cool thing to go attend. It's not necessarily like everything's on the line here. This isn't the biggest, hey, I got to get my best time, and you're only running, you're running a relay in cross country, which is kind of weird. But it's at night. It's at Pole Green Park, and the energy is really great.
Right.
And I know Deep Run's had a lot of success there. They've had a lot of, cross country success, but Glen Allen has really been one of those staple
defending state
teams.
champs.
Yeah. And so they took it there. Took the win in their top girls relay, and I'm sure we'll be getting more of that cross country stuff coming. I think the Milestad Invitational is in a few weeks here, so I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot of the best runners show out there.
Yeah, Pole Green Park does a nice job. It's a good venue because you got the upper course, the lower course, and RVA relays are great for the kids, and it's a great, I guess you would really say, like mid-season form type of event for the runners to really figure out where they are.
That's a good way of putting it with the cross country runners.
Yeah,
it's like litmus tests throughout the season, right? Where are we at? How are we feeling?
And then it's bad for us though because it's at night, so it's like, can you see the kid run? No.
Yeah, I was about to say for your sake, it's kind of hard holding the video camera and seeing just like an illuminated light and then no kids running.
Exactly. So a lot going on, a lot that we talked about that already has happened. Huge matches, volleyball, golf, cross country, field hockey to come, and obviously on the gridiron as well. We got that storm that's popping up on the Atlantic coast, but luckily for us, we have all turf fields, so that shouldn't be a problem.
And, if you're interested in attending, we got schedules online. You can either go to the schools or there's the Colonial District and all these district websites that have the stuff. Make sure you check on policies as far as, each of the schools have their own, ways to get in, purchasing tickets ahead of time, things like that. So definitely check that out because all these sports could use, more fans in the stand.
Absolutely.
As many as that are already there. Because it's always great to see how many people show up to those things. But
there's certain games, like Highland Springs Varina, right? Freeman Godwin, there's certain games where you're going to, the stands are going to be packed. I would love to see that energy throughout.
Yeah.
Throughout. But
if you want to keep track with us, you got watch Sportswire on Twitter.
Absolutely.
We also put a lot of the stuff on the main Henrico County Schools feed. So Henrico County Schools on Instagram, Henrico Schools, Twitter, X, Facebook. So, keep track of stuff there. We'll be delivering more from Sportswire and more from the Sportswire Spotlight.
Absolutely. And you can always watch us on YouTube as well.
Yes.
So we appreciate you being a part, watching again another edition of the Sportswire Spotlight.